This is about being abused, confused. This one's called Mistreated. I've been mistreated. I've been abused. I've been struck downheartedly. I've been confused. Cause I know, yes I know, I've been mistreated.
Hello, I'm Sherri Kane. Welcome to this very special segment of our Hollywood Spin series that is urgent and unprecedented, featuring the films Wag the Dog and Our Brand of Crisis, and the militant media's real-life administration of similar propaganda, concealing the underlying powers behind the Paris attacks.
And I'm Dr. Leonard Horowitz. Thanks for joining us for this program titled From Chaos to Global Governance, exposing the main movers and shakers behind terrorism, the terrorist attacks in Paris, threats to the United States and other nations, predicting and creating more bloodshed and more political instability, risking lives and property everywhere.
In this special report, we're going to explain to you what all of the terror, bloodshed, and confusion is all about, what the outcome of all this chaos is expected to produce, and most importantly, how to resolve all this insanity and bring lasting peace and prosperity to the world. In other words, we see one world government will be increasingly imposed as terror and terrorism spreads courtesy of the media, what we call the Hollywood spin, now generating the international war on terrorism, wherein the terrorists are created, financed, and controlled from the top down by the world's wealthiest globalists who remain hidden behind their corporations.
The troll farmer uses social media to conduct highly coordinated disinformation campaigns on behalf of governments, lobbyists, corporations, crime syndicates, and on occasion, a humble fugitive. He's mastered the art of information warfare by creating events, virtual hoaxes designed to piggyback on real public anxiety. He activates hundreds of fake accounts to post thousands of tweets, creating the appearance of, say, a terrorist attack in Paris that served as cover for an art heist. He doctors screenshots from news outlets to report an Ebola outbreak in Atlanta in order to drive up the stock of a drug company developing a cure. The troll farmer is much more than a rumor monger. The events he creates appear to be real and provoke a very real response. Smoke, manufactured to draw the cameras away from the real fire. The events he creates appear to be real and provoke a very real response. Smoke, manufactured to draw the cameras away from the real fire.
There's a crisis in the White House,
What's the crisis?
and the president's top advisors have been called together.
Oh, jeez.
Now, Washington's top spin doctor
We can distract the press for 11 days till the election. I think we got a chance.
has an idea,
We can't afford a war.
We're gonna have the appearance of a war.
but he can't pull it off without Hollywood's top producer.
Do I know you?
We have some mutual friends in Washington. Why come to me?
We want you to produce. You want me to produce your war? Not a war, it's a pageant. We need a theme, a song, some visuals. We need, it's a pageant.
How close are you to this?
What do you want the kid to say?
All the spectacle
I know we're all concerned for the president,
I know we're all concerned for the president.
I know that we are all concerned for the president.
He didn't sell the line.
All the drama.
The president's going to go to war with Albania in about 30 minutes.
Albania's hard to run.
These are chips.
We need it for the arm position. On the string, it'll be a kitten. We'll punch it in later, right?
And all the effects of real war.
Okay, put the village behind her.
Give me some sound of screaming.
Without the casualties.
America has seldom witnessed a more poignant picture of...
They used the same process with the last Schwarzenegger movie. You're the man.
Albania, Albania.
That rhymes. It's cooking.
From Academy Award-winning director Barry Levinson.
When this goes national, I get to put it on my resume?
Actually, no.
What could they do to me?
Take him home to your house and kill you.
Academy Award winner Dustin Hoffman.
This is politics at its finest.
Academy Award winner Robert De Niro.
How would you like an ambassadorship? That's my payoff. Hell, I just do it for a story to tell. Oh, no, you couldn't tell anybody. Listen, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, you couldn't tell me.
No, it's just it's a pageant. It's a pageant, that's what it is.
Wag the dog.
When the fit hits the shan, somebody's going to have to stay after school.
In this program, we're going to have you consider one criminal racketeering enterprise, one mob, using two fronts, controlling both radical Islamic agents and agencies, including ISIS or ISIL, and the Muslim world's media. And on the other side of the terror spectrum, agents and agencies financing radical Zionists and Western pro-Israel alliances being likewise generated and manipulated by the media, deceiving everyone from top down.
You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? And they're going to let us have it good if we just help them. They're going to leave us alone. Let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life, too. Now, I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
What you have is a total global scam, a red herring, something that misleads or distracts from being focused on world peace to produce war consciousness, exclusively a global war on terror, featuring terror and terrorism. In fact, this politically contrived, mass-mediated terror is being used to discredit and destroy Zionism and anti-Zionism, pro-Israel and anti-Israel forces. And now, in the news, at the time of this filming, the chaos issuing from Syria and pro-ISIS and anti-ISIS financiers in the United States and especially Qatar, as you'll learn in this special report.
Much of this, we the people are informed, stems from Zionism versus anti-Zionism forces, or pro-Israel versus anti-Semitic agents and agencies. So to begin, let's consider what Zionism traditionally meant and where it comes from, as opposed to what is called revisionist Zionists, religious extremists, and radicals. The root word in Zionism is Zion, or Sion, which traditionally meant where the lion lies down with the lamb, a spiritual place of peace on earth, where people, brothers and sisters, prospered in all ways together, a place of everlasting life blessed by the power of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that is the God of Muslims, Christians, and Jews.
Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity, says Psalm 133, written by King David, for all people.
Set aside everything you know or think you know about ISIS, the Paris attacks, Zionism, Jews, and the Muslims for a minute. Here is the real true meaning of Zionism, and here is a classic example of how everything you learned about these political issues giving rise to terrorism is a gross fabrication and distortion by the militant media.
Here's a map of the Middle East in the area between Jerusalem and Mount Nebo, where both Zion and Sion exist for real. According to ancient accounts, rising moisture from the east, caught by the prevailing morning breezes, moving west, fell as morning dew on Jerusalem and Mount Zion. And that dew was believed to carry a very special blessing of peace and life everlasting. So the real, original meaning of Zion, from where Zionism derives, comes from Sion in the form of anointed water that carried the energy or spirituality of peace, brotherhood, and everlasting life for everyone.
And now radical revisionist Zionism has been turned into ever-increasing death and despair by the media controllers. The militant media and extremist groups have done a complete reversal, diversion, and contrived manipulation of Zionism to produce terrorism, like a Hollywood production, a controlled political and criminal enterprise misrepresenting Zionism and turning what is wonderful and peaceful to be a horrible thing.
If you want to win, we're going to have to take risks. You're my tracker. Every event that Rivera attends, every speech, you tape it. If security beats you up, you are doing your job right. Get that beating on tape. Wake up. This is war. There's only one wrong in this. Only one, and that is losing.
Maybe check and see if anyone understood that.
Levanten la mano si hablan inglés.
Gracias. If you should feel something during the interview, like if you have some tears, could you just turn towards the camera?
Whoa, look at him.
This is it.
Yes.
5 points.
Tax the rich, feed the poor, tell their
Not lose to candy now, I swear to God.
This actually kind of matters, Jane. This country could go under. We're talking about people's lives.
You like to pretend you're not one of us. If you fight with monsters for too long, you become a monster.
Eddie, is this your neighborhood? Is this where you live?
People will get hurt. What are you gonna do?
We are trying to save people's lives. These are the stakes. And I'm not going to stand by and watch as this nation falls apart. This is no longer an election. This is a crisis.
Today, we are witnessing war being manufactured by the militant media. This menace promotes what is called radical revisionist Zionists and radical extremist Muslims, or radical Islamic anti-Semites, both warring sides comprised mainly of people who are mentally ill, criminally deranged, having been abused and traumatized as children, who grew up hating, fearing, and consuming instead of loving, producing, and prospering in fellowship with others. Instead of leading a normal life, they feed off of the fear and blood of others, much like serial killers and mass murderers seek the thrill of their victims' terror and justify their sick lives, torturing and killing others to play out their own horrific memories and fantasies.
And both sides have many players, ignorant followers who haven't the knowledge or intelligence to figure the scam out, to see the bigger picture, and stop themselves from being abused by those who bring chaos to the world. Both sides also have their financiers, or investors in warmongering and the militant media, all justified by so-called national security. The main players wield the media like a weapon of mass mind manipulation and population control. They deliver the messages to cause your confusion and profit by it, as civilization is railroaded into military defense spending in response to a national security crisis and public fear frenzy. Terrorism also justifies and helps administer depopulation, fueling corporate fascism and widespread influence over politicians and politics by multinational corporations. Everyone eventually is enslaved to this terrorizing criminal enterprise.
And in this socio-political, commercial chaos, Jews have traditionally been used and abused as scapegoats to justify wars. Now, Sherri and I broke the news that the radical revisionist Zionist Brotherhood associated with the Obama administration, implicating ex-White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel and his brother Ari Emanuel, actually booked the demonic Eagles of Death Metal band for the show at the Bataclan Theater in Paris on Friday the 13th, 2015, actually creating and staging the scene of the bloodiest crime during the Paris attack, sponsored by the anti-Zionist Lagardère group that is part of the Islamic nation of Qatar.
This is the best-kept secret about the Paris attacks. It exposes the criminal enterprise financing and profiting from fear and mass murder. The story we broke and published on waronwethepeople.com evidences the Muslim world's wealthiest nation per capita, Qatar, known to be financing ISIS, acquired this site of the bloodiest killings, the Bataclan Theater, on 9/11/2015. Qatar's mega media anti-Zionist Al-Ghardir conglomerate that controls Al Jazeera Media Network purchased the crime scene from Zionist Jews, while concert organizers in America booked the Eagles of Death metal band through the William Morris Endeavor Agency, controlled by, as Dr. Horowitz just said, radical revisionist Zionist Ari Emanuel, brother of Rahm Emanuel, past White House Chief of Staff for the Obama administration and the current mayor of Chicago.
Hundreds of protesters blocked city streets in Chicago on Wednesday, demanding the resignation of Mayor Rahm Emanuel. The demonstrations are just the latest response to charges of systemic police brutality and misconduct, which have dominated headlines since last year's fatal shooting of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. That incident was captured on dashcam footage and only released to the public under a judge's order, igniting suspicions of cover-ups and corruption that led to the resignation and firing of several prominent Chicago police officials.
This stunning evidence linking the death metal show producers to the Bataclan massacre is corroborated by statements made independently by the production team survivor, Sean London, during an interview with Jim Hutchinson on JimOnLike.com.
The Eagles of Death metal band's front house audio engineer, Mr. London, was incredulous to the fact that the two Bataclan security guards that he observed were stationed at the front door initially, where the terrorists entered and began opening fire on the crowds. He said they inexplicably disappeared and survived the massacre. Mr. London also said just before the shooting started, a third security guard was positioned in front of the stage. He was supposed to help handle a couple of the misbehaving youths. But suddenly, he and two other security guards in the front of the stage area just walked away, left their responsibilities, seconds before the firing began. Later, London said he was shocked to see that the Bataclan's front door security guardsmen had gotten out alive. "I don't know," he said. "I'm not trying to make any accusations that they had something to do with it, but it was really strange that they got out through the front door where nobody else was getting out."
Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Jim from JimOnLike.com here. Listen, I've been fortunate enough to be given an interview with Sean London. Sean is the Eagles of Death Metal's front of house audio guy. Sean survived the attack at Le Bataclan. Sean gave us his story, and if you're not used to dealing with things that are pretty real like this, like death and gunfire and just things of that nature, just be warned that it's coming in this interview. I'm super glad that I'm able to chat with you today, man. It's so rough. I mean, can you walk me through some of what happened?
Sure. We stayed there, and the bullets just kept getting shot. I mean, an AK-47 at close range is a really loud gun. And then the concussion from the bullet out of the barrel, you can feel it at close range, at 2 feet. And the smell of the gunpowder and the blood, you can smell blood mixed in. It's like a copper penny in your mouth, you know, you just can't forget that. And people screaming for their lives, just, you know, poor kids next to me going, no, 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 please, you know, in American and in French, and just silence after a few shots. And these guys were just there for one reason, is to kill as many people as they could. And they knew they were not coming out of this alive. So they just went through and just systematically were just killing and shooting people in the back, because you couldn't do anything but lie down on the ground, because if you tried to run, they would get you. So the way they came in through the entrance behind me, they stayed there for a while. So nobody could just escape. So everybody laid down. The whole dance floor was on the ground. So they just started going through. That's when, about 15 minutes into the firing, they would change clips out every 5 minutes. And they would go through, they were 20-round clips, is what I remember seeing. So then they started going through, still shooting, and I'm like, at this time, going, where's the police? I mean, how do these guys continue to shoot and nobody's doing anything? And it was just horrifying, and people screaming and chaos. It just, I had to get out of there. I just knew that I wasn't gonna die there. But these guys were taking a little more time than usual to pull up wherever their magazines were and loading and cocking. That gave us at least 20 seconds to 30 seconds to get up and go. And that's what we did on about the third time when the one guy ran out of bullets. We got out of there. We got up and ran, and I pulled the girl that was in front of me, just dragged her pretty much up the step, and then we all just hit the door, ran for it, and got out. The gunman did turn towards us and shoot, but missed us. And once we got outside, there were no cops. There was 2 cops at the corner of the building, and I was out in the middle of the street, kind of like looking for someone to tell me what to do or go somewhere. And there was just bodies still out in the middle of the street and on the sidewalk, just laid out, bloody, dead. And I finally ran to the other corner where people were they were basically, the emergency services were all parked and waiting for the special teams to come in so they can go in and just rush these guys. So I was out by then, but I kept hearing shooting and shooting. They kept shooting. So that's when I was standing out in the middle of the street waiting to see if I saw anybody. I saw my tour manager walk out, and that's when I said, "Where's everybody else?" And that's when he confirmed that our friend Nick got killed, because I know Nick got shot, but I didn't know if he was dead or not. But Nick was out, done. We had a lot of guests there as well, and a lot of our guests didn't make it.
So sorry, brother.
Yeah.
Oh. Was there no venue security? I mean, tell me about that. What was going on there?
Believe it or not, the venue security, there was only 4 security guards for the whole night, completely. They had 2 at the door originally when the doors opened. They had 1 guy standing next to the backstage area and 1 guy in the pit. When the shooting started, there was 2 guys in the pit, and there was 1 guy that was standing still at the door by the security, or by the backstage entrance, and there was 1 guy that was kind of roaming around somewhere near the venue, and like the front house area by the bar. When the shooting started, right before it started, my singer actually, because I have to watch what he's doing, because he walks out on stage, and I have to kind of watch it right his mic, because he'll feed back under the stack, and he gets there and he's gonna actually yell at him, telling him, "What are you doing?" Because these kids were falling over the barricade and hurting themselves, and nobody was doing anything to help them, except for 1 security guard was. So when he went to tell him that, the guy walked away. The 2 security guards that were there all left, and next thing I know, the firing started. When I got outside, after I got out, from the front of the building, and I got up to the corner, the first 2 people I see that I recognized were the security guards in their Bataclan jackets, and they were sitting at the corner, and they looked at me like they were surprised that I was still alive, and because they knew where I was in the venue, and how close I was to the initial attack. And I don't know, I'm just I'm not trying to make any, what do you call it? Accusations, I'm sorry. Yeah. That, they had something to do with it, but it was really strange that they got out through the front where nobody else was getting out. And they were out before I got out. And that, I just don't understand. It's just kind of confusing to me.
So no shit. So the 2 security guards that were in the front got out the front before the gunmen started shooting.
Exactly.
I wonder why no one said anything about that. That seems a little.
Well, no one really knows, or just I don't think anybody recognized that they were security. Maybe, I don't know, but I know that we did, because we went with them all day, most of the day when the doors were open, and they weren't very nice either. Usually security guards are pretty cool with us. They smile, they talk. These guys didn't say a word. One of the guys was actually really cool, that was out at front, just sitting by himself, checking tickets, and he was okay. And but the rest of these guys, they just, they didn't want to deal. It's just odd that they were out of the building before we all made it out. And they were at the stage position when this was going on.
Oh, that just fucking nauseates me to hear that.
Right.
Oh.
That experience caused London to question the entire event. He implied there was a possibility, if not high probability, that the attacks were organized, and the lax Paris police had foreknowledge and were complicit in the massacre.
These shocking revelations and associations concealed by intelligence agencies, investigating officials, and the militant media, evidence an organized criminal conspiracy and global racketeering enterprise heavily invested in the militant media and its diversions, terror, and profitable mass murder. The Bataclan concert venue was owned for 40 years by a Jewish family that was allegedly targeted by anti-Zionists, according to the Times of Israel, that wrote nothing of who bought the property. The theater often hosted pro-Israel events, including a conference for approximately 500 Christian Zionists 1 month before the Paris attacks. Those pro-Israel events drew fierce opposition from Muslim radicals.
The Bataclan's new owner, the LaGuardia Group, is effectively owned and controlled by Qatar's monarch, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. LaGuardia purchased the building, ironically, on September the 11th of 2015, that is, 9/11. The venue is currently being run by LaGuardia's unlimited live entertainment of the LaGuardia Group that includes properties heavily invested in defense, aerospace, and telecommunications.
Qatar's LaGuardia is among the world's most powerful media conglomerates, whose client list reads like a who's who in global defense, security, oil, and aerospace, as well as publishing. According to this group's propaganda, it is a world-leading advertising and promotions content producer, whose powerful brands leverage its virtual and physical networks to attract and retain qualified audiences.
In other words, regarding ISIS and the Paris attacks, Qatar and Sheikh Al Thani hold special interest in saying they seek peace, yet generating terrorist attacks and related publicity that leverages ISIS through its networks to attract and retain audiences susceptible to terrorist attacks, fear, and markets these mass murderers generate. This means, of course, that the international war on terror will continue, along with Qatar's investments in the New World economy and resulting profits from depopulation and counter-terrorist operations.
Qatar is the richest country in the world per capita, with an average income in the country of $86,440 per person per year. During Sheikh Al Thani's reign, he established a Qatar Investment Authority that by 2013 had invested more than $100 billion around the world, most prominently in the Shard, Barclays Bank, Heathrow Airport, Harrods, St. Paris Germain FC, Volkswagen, Siemens, and the Royal Dutch Shell Corporation. The Dutch Shell Oil Company is headquartered in the Netherlands and is the 4th largest company in the world.
Quoting Wikipedia, there are few Jews in Qatar. After all, if you were Jewish, why would you live in the most anti-Semitic country in the world? In 2013, Qatar's total population was 1.8 million, but there are actually only 278,000 Qatari citizens. The rest, 1.5 million people, simply expatriate to Qatar to make money and get tax breaks. In other words, the way nations tax people, citizens are encouraged to leave their home country, move to Qatar, and build Qatar's economy, funding terrorism and destabilizing home nations.
Here is a picture of Queen Elizabeth II of the House of Orange, meeting with Qatar's Al Thani. Most importantly, Al Thani owns Al Jazeera Media Network, the main voice of Islam. Al Jazeera interviewed me several times before they established their American operations, and subsequently have censored, like Google, YouTube, and Wikipedia, as well as PR Newswire service, Reuters, and Associated Press, my articles and DVDs. Now this is the same Sheikh Al Thani who in 2010 caused Harrods of London department store to be boycotted when the father of the late Princess Diana's boyfriend, Mohammed Al Fayed, sold Harrods to Qatar Holdings.
You might recall that following Princess Diana's death, Mr. Al-Fayed protested this so-called auto accident and demanded proper investigations by Western officials. From his view, selling London's most famous department store to the world's wealthiest terrorists, subjecting England to the infamy of Al-Thani's expanding buyout of their city, is a form of retribution. Pictured here is evidence of the gross disrespect the Qatar monarch has for British civility and English law. This family's 2 super sports cars get ticketed and booted for Al-Thani's failure to pay his parking violations as he and his family shop at the store.
A developing story from Beverly Hills right now. Police say they have identified that driver who raced a yellow Ferrari through the streets of a neighborhood, but they might not be able to find him. KCAL 9's Jeff Nguyen is live at Beverly Hills Police Headquarters to show us why. Jeff.
Well, Sandra, it seems like the owner of the yellow Ferrari that was caught on camera driving dangerously fast down a residential street in Beverly Hills is now gone. Let's go ahead and take you back to Saturday afternoon with this video that has caused a lot of outrage. A yellow Ferrari and a white Porsche were caught on camera ripping down Walden Street. Eventually, the Ferrari was seen smoking after witnesses said it did burnouts. Today, the Beverly Hills Police Department says the owner of that Ferrari is Qatar national Sheikh Khalid Hamad Al Thani. This morning, the State Department told investigators Al Thani has left the country. The other big news today has to do with diplomatic immunity. When officers first got to this home where the cars were parked, a man approached them, telling them that he was the owner of the cars. Now, police also tell us he told them he had diplomatic immunity. But today, the chief of police tells us that that is simply not true.
It's against the federal law for someone to claim diplomatic immunity when they don't have it. So we're looking at that, and then we're also looking at the reckless driving. What we need to do is complete that investigation. That would be positively identifying who is driving the vehicles, and then present that case to the district attorney's office.
So the chief tells us that reckless driving charges could be filed against the drivers. However, that's only a misdemeanor. Police say that the Ferrari came into this country recently. However, it was not appropriately registered to the State Department. And they also tell us that the owner of the Ferrari does not have a California driver's license. One more thing before we hand it back to you. They also tell us that right now they are trying to figure out exactly who the owner of that Porsche is. For now, we are live in Beverly Hills. Jeff Nguyen, KCAL 9 News.
What's up, Pimsicles? In September 2015, I'm Alejandro, and let's talk about cars. The infamous video of the white GT3 and the yellow LaFerrari from Qatar in Beverly Hills. But the real reason why everyone's up in arms and fucking mad as fuck is not because the cars were speeding and whatever, but the fact that these guys actually have diplomatic immunity from Qatar, which is the country that they're coming from, of course. But it only gets better from there, because apparently some video journalist guy made it to the scene. Everyone's already in the house, the LaFerrari's smoking, the cops are there, blah, blah, blah. You know, the guy's just trying to do his thing. He's recording everything. And one of the drivers approached him and said, "Hey, you can't be here, don't film me, get out." To what the journalist replies, and I'm paraphrasing here everything I'm saying, "You know, I'm not breaking any laws. I'm just filming from the street. It's public property. I'm good." To what the driver responds, "You know, I can have you killed and get away with it." Who the fuck says that? Anyways, so the journalist tells the guy, "I'm not breaking any laws. I'm out here in the street. I have all my right, you know? I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not harassing you." To what the guy replies, "Fuck America," and fucking flicks a cigarette to his face.
According to Western intelligence, Al Thani has massive investments into China, America, as well as in ISIS. Only after widespread criticism from the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and the international community did Saudi Arabia pass legislation in 2013 criminalizing financial support of terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS or ISIL.
The relatively open banking systems of Qatar and Kuwait are being skillfully exploited by ISIS and their royal financiers. Funds tend to reach ISIS militants by a circuitous route, frequently flowing from Qatar to Kuwait, which operates as a clearinghouse for funds heading to Syria, Iraq, and Iran. The Paris attacks occurred only weeks after an ISIS suicide bomber destroyed a Russian jet, killing all 224 passengers aboard. Then immediately after the attacks, 2 murders by ISIS terrorists killed hostages from China and Norway. The theory that these international attacks and global community damages were done by ISIS alone does not make any sense, considering the fact that these radical religious extremist terrorists traditionally target their political messages against a single infidel people or nation. It does not make any sense that intelligence officials working for ISIS, previously perhaps still funded and armed by the CIA, would not know to avoid angering the entire world.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. She's a member of the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee. She's also an Iraq War veteran. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, says he wouldn't rule out the possibility that ISIS shot down this airliner, to which you say...
Look at really the threat that Russia faces from Islamic extremism. I think we forget sometimes really how close Russia is and the former Soviet Union states to bordering these Middle Eastern states and the chaos that exists there. And we also see directly why Russia is so concerned about keeping Assad in power in Syria. They recognize directly that if Assad and the Syrian government of Assad is overthrown, then these Islamic extremist groups like ISIS and like Al-Qaeda will step in and will take over all of Syria, presenting a direct and existential threat to Russia. We're seeing in other parts of Syria, for example, how some of the weapons that the U.S. has provided have gotten into the hands of these Islamic extremist groups. So the point is, the situation on the ground is changing. This investigation needs to be completed.
Let's talk about this deal, this agreement that was worked out today between the United States and Russia to avoid some accidental head-on collision between fighter jets over Syria. The secrecy of this deal, they're not making it public. Does that concern you?
There's a bigger issue here that I'm concerned with, and that is the fact that the U.S. and the CIA are working to overthrow the Syrian government of Assad, while Russia, a longtime ally of Assad for decades now, is working to defend or uphold this Syrian government of Assad. And this puts us in a position of a possible direct head-to-head conflict with Russia as long as the U.S. and CIA continue down this path.
Well, how does the U.S. and Russia avoid that head-on contact? Because you're absolutely right. The U.S. wants to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. The Russians want to boost him and protect him together with the Iranians, their allies, the Lebanese Hezbollah group. They're trying to prop him up. So how do you avoid that potential collision?
Very simple. The U.S. and the CIA should stop this illegal and counterproductive war to overthrow the Syrian government of Assad, and should stay focused on fighting against who our enemy is, the Islamic extremist groups. Because right now we're seeing why this is counterproductive. By working towards that end, by working towards overthrowing the Syrian government of Assad, we are not only strengthening our enemy, the Islamic extremists, who will walk in and take over all of the country of Syria. Right now they have about half of the country under their control, but it also puts us in that position of a potential direct head-to-head conflict with Russia, which brings us to the brink of a potential larger conflict of a World War III type situation.
Why do you say the U.S. effort to get rid of Bashar al-Assad's regime is counterproductive and illegal?
Well, first of all, there's not been a vote in Congress to authorize the use of force, to authorize a war to overthrow a sovereign government. For as long as I've been there, that hasn't happened. It didn't happen before I got there. So the American people haven't had a choice to speak their voice, to approve or disapprove such a war. Therefore, it's illegal. Secondly, it is counterproductive because right now, U.S. arms are getting into the hands of our enemy, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, these other groups, Islamic extremist groups who are our sworn enemy. These are groups who attacked us on 9/11 and who supposedly we're trying to defeat, yet at the same time supporting them with these arms to overthrow this Syrian government. So
you don't even want the U.S. to provide weapons or arms to these anti-Bashar al-Assad rebels?
I don't want the U.S. government to provide weapons to Al-Qaeda, to Islamic extremists, to our enemy. I think it's a very simple concept in my mind that you can't defeat your enemy if you're arming them and helping them at the same time. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Have you told this to officials at the White House?
We've had conversations, both in hearings and otherwise, and I think it's important for the American people to stand up and say, look, we don't want to go and do what happened in Iraq with Saddam Hussein, do what happened in Libya with Gaddafi, because these are countries that have fallen into chaos and that have been taken over by these terrorists because of the actions that the United States and others took.
And this organized criminal conspiracy involving complicit parties in the militant media, government, high finance, and politics does not stop with the CIA or Al-Thani. It goes directly to Hollywood and the White House, as we mentioned, and published on waronwethepeople.com. Ari Emanuel is a hardline revisionist Zionist, media mogul, and image maker for even the Pope, and the Hollywood headhunter directing the William Morris Endeavor Agency, and their father, Benjamin M. Emanuel, who is active in the Irgun, a hard-line Zionist terrorist organization condemned by British authorities, as well as the 1946 Zionist Congress.
It was Ari Emanuel's entertainment company that booked the Eagles of Death Metal band to play at the Bataclan Theater, the bloodiest scene of the Friday the 13th crime. From the evidence published, it is obvious that the radical anti-Zionist Islamic owners of the Bataclan Theater worked with radical Jewish revisionist Zionist Hollywood mogul Ari Emanuel's company, WME, to actually stage the show. Not simply the physical stage at the Bataclan, but what went on. Consider the outrageous choice of demonic lyrics sung by the death metal band at the time of the shootings, the perfect lyrics to justify Islamic jihad or holy war against the infidel West.
Emanuel obviously knew that the venue had been sold to Al-Thani's group of anti-Zionists, and that they are enemies of Israel, and that they would use this crude and outrageous demonstration of Jew-instigated devil worship to fuel anti-Semitism and further terrorism. It was a perfect scene and setup. In fact, it is unreasonable to argue otherwise, given Emanuel's and Al-Thani's powerful positions in politics and the militant media, interfacing as they do with Western intelligence agencies and the flow of information therein. There is no way that the Emanuel brothers did not know that the wealthiest source of ISIS funding, Qatar agents, Lagardère Group, owned and operated the Bataclan at showtime, and that the terrorist attacks there would not expand the so-called holy war internationally, most profitably, regardless of its casualties.
More incriminating evidence of a false flag fix comes from Russian television. In an interview they did with a witness viewing what was happening from the balcony of the Bataclan as the shooting began.
Well, welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shevardnadze. Mourning, shock, and resolve is up in the Parisian air after the terrorist acts of November 13, in one of which 3 gunmen entered a concert hall during live performance and unleashed a hail of bullets on the crowd inside. What is it like to be a target of a terrorist act? How do you survive and live afterwards? Today I speak to Pierre Jacques, a young man who was inside the Bataclan Theater when the gunmen struck. Pierre, thank you so much for being with us today. Now you are a Paris shooting, Bataclan shooting survivor. You're also a TV and radio presenter, and you work in the field of music. So that night you were just there
to have fun.
To have fun.
They killed the young guys and the young girls, the Muslims, the black, the white. There were a lot of different people over there, and they kill everybody. They don't mind. They don't mind. They are not human.
So they came into the toilets as well, the terrorists?
No, they came in this room.
Wing, yes.
Yeah, and in this room there's the toilets. But they never. The chance is amazing because they never tried to open the door. Never.
What was this, like a security room or something?
No, this is the artist place where they.
Where they put the makeup, the backstage.
Yeah. And
so they thought there was no one there, right?
Yeah, but they tried to open all the doors, but not this one. And this is just amazing.
We're hearing in the bathroom him telling the girl that it's all because of Hollande and because you guys are invading our countries, and when you're killing innocent terrorists, it's the same thing as we're killing you right now. What do you hear? What happens when you hear those words?
So all my thoughts go to the families of the victims, but our governments are just doing what they think is good, but they kill innocent people, and that's true. And we know that it's so sad, but we don't think about that. We just think about ourselves, and it's so you're just like, yes, it's right. So that's not an excuse or something. I hate them, and I don't want to say good things about them, but those words are true. We kill the innocent people all the time because we just care about things that we think that they are good, like Western way of life or things. Everybody can live like they want if they respect each other ones, that's all. It's the worst thing I lived, the picture that I have in my head all day long and all time long, it's this woman on the floor with the policeman just there, and they say, run, don't look at anything, just run. And she was alive with all this blood on the floor, just crying and say, please help me. And we walked on her. We walked on her body, and she was alive. So we are monsters too. And she was just saying, help me, and we walked on her. And that's the worst thing I had in my face.
And no one knows if she stayed alive or not?
And we don't know yet, no. She's alive. And I would love to just kiss her, make hugs and say, I love you. Like today, I love everybody. I just love everybody. I said I would love to send a text message to my parents to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all the stupid things I did when I was young and everything. I'm so sorry, I love you. I just want to, this time you just want to say to everybody, I love you, that's all. Be happy, I love you, that's all.
To hell with peace, love, and goodwill between religious communities, nations, and fellow man. The mainstream media's message is arm yourself, prepare for war with your neighbor, or risk dying. But that inconsistency, fueling curiosity, is best explained in a closer examination of Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, a couple of days after the Chinese and Norwegian hostages were murdered. Wall Street's front page message was titled, Pressure Grows for Global Effort. The adjacent article said the Paris plotter was being targeted by the West. It talked about Belgium's involvement in hosting and arming ISIS agents. Below these headlines was that the GOP, the Republican Party, pushes back on refugees, consistent with Donald Trump's campaign platform, and French President Hollande, closing France's borders to Syrian refugees.
The frontrunner for the Republican presidential nomination drew heavy fire today over his proposal to ban Muslims from coming into the United States, much of that fire from his own party. But Donald Trump did not back down. He said he doesn't care about the criticism because he insists he is right. And Trump is not without his supporters.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
And here's the kicker. Oil and stock prices rise after the Paris attacks, the headline said, and framed Bono's head from U2, photographed 15 years ago, holding up a petition with 21.2 million signatures, urging the international bankers to forgive Africa's debt. The article heralded why Africa's big debt burdens are back. All of this is consistent with what Occam's razor analysis says is the best and most obvious explanation for the terrorism campaign, that is, to reduce populations by blaming terrorism, including bioterrorism, that is extremely likely to be loosed under these deadly and deceptive circumstances.
In fact, populations terrorized and distressed, many in shock from having to watch deadly attacks over and over again, courtesy of the militant media, become immune suppressed. Then people become more susceptible to dying from infectious diseases like Ebola, SARS, H1N1, swine flu, or AIDS, each likewise appearing to have been profitably loosed, man-made outbreaks that now, like ISIS terror, demands a coordinated international response.
My name is Toby Gatti. I'm from the United States, from Washington, D.C. President Obama laid out 3 challenges: Ebola, ISIS, and Russia, because of events in Ukraine. Russian leaders were very upset about this formulation. And I must tell you, today, I didn't hear you lay out 3 challenges. I heard you lay out one problem in the world, and that problem is the United States. My questions to you are the following. Who are they, Ani, in your speech? Is it President Obama? Is it the American foreign policy elite? Is it the American people? Or is what you are describing in the genetic code of the United States in the post-war world? And you are saying, in effect, that you can't work with the United States at all or with its closest allies. And my second question is, do you see any special role coming from other countries? And here I would put in particular China and our many friendly Chinese colleagues. And my third question to you is really the most important. What would you expect the American response to be to this speech?
First of all, I did not say the United States is a threat to Russia. Like you said, President Obama does consider Russia a threat, but I do not regard the United States as a threat for us. I do believe that the policies of the ruling elite in the United States, if you excuse me this cliché, is erroneous. I am sure it is contrary not only to Russia's interest, it also undermines confidence for the United States. And as such, it actually inflicts damage on the U.S. itself. It undermines its confidence as one of the global leaders, both in the economy and in the world of politics. Of course, you can omit a lot of things. You can actually be silent about a lot of things. But Dominic has said it, and me too. This unilateral action and the consequent search of allies and coalitions once everything has already been done, this is not a way to come to terms. This is unilateral action, and we see it implemented and employed recurrently in U.S. policies, and they all lead to crisis. President Obama mentioned the Islamic State as one other threat. But tell me, who actually initially helped arm the people who were fighting the Assad governments in Syria? Who was the one providing them with a favorable media climate, with a favorable media environment? Who facilitated arms sales to those people? Don't you know who is actually fighting in Syria? It's mercenaries. Do you know that mercenaries are people who fight for money, and they actually fight where where the pay is higher? They get certain amounts of money as payment for waging war. They have arms supplied to them. But once they find out that in another country the pay is higher, they will actually migrate there because they're looking for more pay. They managed to gain control of some oil deposits in Iraq or in Syria. They started pumping oil there. Do they have buyers who buy oil from them? Yes, they do. Why aren't sanctions imposed against those buyers? Doesn't the United States know who those people are? Isn't it their own allies who actually buy oil from terrorists? Don't they have the capacity to influence their allies? Or is it that they don't want to influence them? If not, why are they delivering airstrikes against ISIS right now? Once they started developing oil in Iraq, part of the fighters immediately migrated from the so-called moderate, civilized opposition to Assad to ISIS because they wanted more money. So I think those policies of the United States are so badly detached from reality. They wanted to support this democratic, civilized opposition in Syria. They handed them arms. The next day, figuratively speaking, the next day, half of those fighters turned around and joined ISIS. And that should have been expected. We believe this attitude eventually harms everyone's interests, including ours. As for American policies, I would love to see people like you heading the Department of State in the U.S., because maybe then we could change the situation. Unless that is possible, I would request you, I would bid you to bring this idea over to the U.S. President or the State Secretary. Tell them that Russia does not seek confrontation. As long as you respect our interests, a lot of the issues between us will be resolved. But that will have to be actual respect, not only ostensible, proclaimed respect. That means refraining from exploiting your domination, your exclusive competitive edge in the economy or in military sphere, in everything. Take Iraq. There is fighting in Iraq. It's bad in Iraq. Take Libya, where you actually led it to a point where the American ambassador was killed by a mob. Was Russia guilty of that? At some point, it was you who decided to establish a no-fly zone in Libya to prevent Gaddafi's air force from delivering airstrikes on fighters. That was your decision. Whether it was rational or not, it's up to you. But eventually, what you see is delivering airstrikes on that territory yourself without any mandate from the UN Security Council. Was it Russia doing that? No, it was you. And it ended up with the US ambassador being killed in Libya. Whose fault is this? This is only your fault. Is that good for the US that its ambassador was murdered in Libya? Of course not. That was a terrible catastrophe, a tragedy. But you should not point fingers and look for someone to blame if it was your mistake. You need to be able to get over your own urge for domination and your imperial ambition. You need to refrain from poisoning the mindset of millions of people by leading them to believe that the U.S. can have no foreign policies other than imperial foreign policies. We will never forget that Russia assisted the U.S. in winning independence. We will never forget our cooperation during the First World War and World War II. I believe that our deep-lying strategic interests are largely similar between Russia and the U.S. And we should proceed from those mutual interests.
So now the militant media is promoting an unprecedented East-West alliance, now called the Global International War on Terror, or the Global Alliance. And that war is actually a euphemism or misrepresentation to hash what is really happening. What is really happening is that the war on terror is being financed and fueled by the same people who control the media. The arms flowing into terrorist hands and the military, medical, petrochemical, pharmaceutical, banking cartel.
Don't forget, the main purpose is to control and reduce populations and the risk of popular uprisings by keeping people confused, frightened, sick, and dying. This is so-called big business and wag-the-dog politics. It means media spun by the militant media issuing propaganda to divert attention from something more important. In this case, imposing globalization on civilization by killing masses of people worldwide versus advancing world peace, honestly, securing freedom.
If international peace and stopping terrorism committed to press politicians to change policies was truly wanted by the power brokers, then they could certainly afford to hire social psychologists and behavioral scientists to direct the opposite of what we're witnessing.
Their corporate fascism, terrorism, and bloodbaths also create depopulation, which reduces the controller's risk of revolution, popular uprisings by people who are awakening to being manipulated by the militant media. Everyone, in effect, is enslaved to this media influence, protecting a demonic and psychopathic racketeering enterprise profiting from mass murder and genocide.
This organization, do you know what it's called? Its name is Spectre.
Do you know who links them all?
Now even the worlds of sports and entertainment is tainted by terror and steeped in propaganda, accompanying terrorist events. And that runs counter to what we are being told and sold. Here's why.
Have you ever watched people watch TV? They don't blink. Magic is mainly administered by the sleight of hand. The entertainer prompts onlookers to focus on one hand while the other hand works the trick. The diversion is fundamental to the deception. Afterwards, magicians traditionally conceal how the trick is administered and divert when you ask them to reveal their secrets. The world of false flag media administered terrorism is similarly administered. The propagandists on both sides of every issue profit from the terror enterprise, and all the parties conceal who amongst them is really accountable.
This intelligence in behavioral science and mass media persuasion, deception, is crucial in bringing the murderers of 9/11 and the Paris attacks to justice. And in this context, the Bataclan Theater purchase and sale is most important. If you were to do a Google search, as we did 2 days after the Paris attacks, using the phrase Bataclan sold to Qatar company, you would expect several hits, providing evidence of the sale and implications of the sale, especially since leading governmental and media investigators have been claiming they're doing everything in their power to track down and apprehend the suspects and provide exceptional news reporting, says the media. However, as you can see by the screenshot here, our search returned nothing other than a few articles from the London's Daily Mail dating back months and years with not a word about the Bataclan sale to Qatar or any entity whatsoever.
President Eisenhower said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex."
This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. 3 of these involved our own country. Despite these holocausts, America is today the strongest, the most influential, and most productive nation in the world. Understandably proud of this preeminence, we yet realize that America's leadership and prestige depend not merely upon our unmatched material progress, riches, and military strength, but on how we use our power in the interest of world peace and human betterment. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. Threats, new in kind or degree, constantly arise. Of these I mention 2 only. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms, but with intellect and decent purpose. Because this need is so sharp and apparent, I confess that I lay down my official responsibilities in this field with a definite sense of disappointment. You and I, my fellow citizens, need to be strong in our faith that all nations under God will reach the goal of peace with justice. May we be ever unswerving in devotion to principle, confident but humble with power, diligent in pursuit of the nation's great goals. To all the peoples of the world, I once more give expression to America's prayerful and continuing aspiration. We pray that peoples of all faiths, all races, all nations may have their great human needs satisfied, that those now denied opportunity shall come to enjoy it to the full, that all who yearn for freedom may experience its spiritual blessings. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility, that all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth, and that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love.
Today, the main players not only wield the military and war industry, they also control the militant media. They deliver propaganda, the messages output to cause your confusion and profit by chaos as civilization is railroaded into military defense spending to relieve national security threats.
We conclude that the Paris attacks and current international call to arms against ISIS or ISIL is a political campaign waged by co-conspiring groups, not necessarily competing groups, much like two competing mobs joining forces to expand their wealth and power through a joint racketeering enterprise. In other words, it is most probable that the Paris attacks were conducted by radical revisionist Zionists and anti-Zionist mobs, two seemingly opposite groups working together to co-create the helter-skelter media deceptions we are witnessing.
The aforementioned facts supplement evidence that provide probable cause for investigators in France, Russia, and elsewhere to issue indictments against the agents, agencies, and companies named in this report and our series of 6 related articles on war on WeThePeople.com. We have named the main players who are aiding and abetting terrorism. These entities control the mainstream media, East and West. They are not simply reporting the news, they are manufacturing it.
I'm Dr. Len Horowitz, reporting for Revolution Television Network at revolutiontelevision.net.
And I'm Sherri Kane, thanking you for watching and sharing this program with others. You can learn more about our efforts to expose the truth about the Paris attacks by clicking on the Media tab at waronwethepeople.com. Select the Paris attack links and then its submenu. And you can financially support us by helping yourself and improving your own health by shopping at our sponsors, healthyworldstore.com and cureshop.com. That's healthyworldstore.com and cureshop.com.
Please share this video presentation with others in efforts to shed light on the bigger picture that we now see. Only by grassroots activism can we stop civilization's victimization and generate enough public awareness to shame and indict the devildoers to stop committing these horrific crimes. Bye for now.
This is about being abused, confused. This one's called Mistreated.